my mission is clear. I'm focused. I'm prepared. I'm ready. I've been trained by the best. I went to Howard University that overturned legal segregation in this country. I've been taught in those classrooms where Thurgood Marshall once taught. I'm not afraid of no president. Donald Trump, we're ready for you. We're coming for you. We're standing up for you. We're fighting on. We're not going down silent. Victory, my friends, is clear. It's now. And I'm not waiting 4 years. I'm waiting 2 until a speaker by the name of Hakeem Jeffries comes to bring us some rest. Come on, ladies. It's up to us. We saved this democracy before. We'll save it now. Let's go.
Letitia James is big scared right now, and one of the reasons why she's so scared is because the Trump administration recently received a referral for prosecution based on the information that, by the way, I presented to you almost before any other YouTuber and before the national media caught wind of it, because I found it in this white-collar fraud article that was actually written by a man called Sam Antar, aka Crazy Eddie from the 1980s.
It's Crazy Eddie's greatest stereo sale ever. Get anything and everything in stereo equipment. Get it all now during Crazy Eddie's greatest stereo sale ever. Crazy Eddie, his prices are insane.
Which, by the way, may be the chef's kiss kind of moment in this particular tale, because you have a guy that's a former criminal who ended up falsifying records in order to fool Wall Street in the largest retail fraud in American history at the time, busting up Letitia James for mortgage fraud. And again, we were ahead of the curve on this. Sam was obviously first on this particular story, so I think we need credit where credit is due. I believe the youths say that you got to give me my flowers right now, which I would really appreciate some hydrangeas, because now everybody seems to be on board with this, but a lot of these news outlets are not actually examining the documents specifically. But anyway, we got to break down all the updates related to this. Now look, setting aside where credit is due, which by the way, credit is due to me. I just want to be clear about that. I was on this about 3 days before most of the YouTubers and whatnot that you might have heard this story from. Let us get into the updates of the story. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
This seems like a kind of trivial matter, that things were characterized in the way they were in order to get this this loan, but I think it is a fair and valid point that these in particular prosecutions of Trump really hinged on I's not being dotted properly, T's not being crossed properly in order to pursue him. If you try really hard, this is just the case because there are so many laws on the books. If you try really hard to find someone committed some tax or financial matter incorrectly, you will find something. They found something in this case. They found lots of things in Trump's cases. They have a wide range of merit, how merited they are in my view. So I think I do take Jonathan Turley's point here.
So look, there is a lot of news coverage on this particular story, but one of the things that I can tell you for sure by watching a bunch of these different segments is that a lot of these people did not read the original documents. And the reason why I know that is because there is no way you can go through the 22-page PDF that, by the way, was republished by White Collar and by Sam Antman, the guy behind Crazy Eddie's back in the 80s, and say things like, oh, well, it's different here because she may have made this error or something of the sort, when in black and white, we can see clearly and obviously in documents signed by Letitia James that she did, in fact, materially misrepresent herself on these particular documents. And again, Robbie Suave over at The Hill Rising is trying to pretend like it's no big deal. The guy on Fox News is trying to say it's similar to the Trump situation where his attorneys ended up preparing these documents for him and he was supposed to examine them, but he actually didn't. But I will tell you, that could not be further from the truth. This power of attorney letter is only 2 pages long. We read it in detail on this channel before, but the key things that you need to know is that it states clearly and obviously that Letitia James intends to make this Virginia property her primary residence. And again, this is in a statement that she had drafted, that she signed, it's only 2 pages long, in order to give somebody power of attorney in order to negotiate for this property that they were buying. This is not in any way, shape, or form anything ambiguous. This does not involve an attorney making a mistake or anything of the sort. This is Letitia James lying on a document about how she's going to change her principal residence from New York State to the state of Virginia. And let's be clear about this. This document was signed by Letitia James merely 6 weeks before she decided to charge Trump with making fraudulent representations in order to receive better terms on the loan. Now, the reason why this matters is because when you declare something to be a principal residence, that is the reason why you're trying to get the loan. You get better terms as opposed to you trying to buy something as an investment property or as a secondary residence.
Trump administration accuses Attorney General Tish James of mortgage fraud. They allege in court documents that in 2023, James granted her power of attorney to make a Norfolk, Virginia property her principal residence, despite her actually living and serving as Attorney General in New York. They also allege she bought a 5-family property in Brooklyn in 2001 with a loan that is only available for homes with 4 units or less.
So it is very likely that Letitia James, who is a lawyer, who is the state attorney general for New York at the time that she signed this paperwork, who is preparing a case against Donald Trump for having inaccuracies in his business filings for loans with a financial institution, was intentionally misrepresenting that this would be her principal residence in order to get better terms on the loan. And by the way, clearly and obviously, she knew this was illegal when she was doing it, and she did it anyways. Again, it's not just, oh, she's a hypocrite. It's that she is a criminal, and she actually committed a much more commonly prosecuted form of mortgage fraud that other district attorneys like Marilyn Mosby of Baltimore have been prosecuted for. Again, this is not an ambiguous case. This is her name on this statement right here. It's 2 pages long. It is not a lawyer's name or a proxy's name or anything of the sort. It is a material misrepresentation for the purposes of securing financing that she knows is wrong and is about to prosecute Trump for a different version of that was prepared in the Trump case by a third party. Now, of course, you had some people say, oh, well, Trump was misrepresenting the size of his penthouse in one of his buildings, which was, by the way, stated clearly and obviously on the Hill Rising segment.
It is an embarrassing case for Tish James, but let me first dispute the dot the I's and cross the T's thing in Trump's case, because Trump was perceived to have gained to the tune of perhaps billions of dollars by misrepresenting his assets. Some of those may be debatable, where you say, well, this property's worth this, rather than that. It included, though, him saying that his own apartment in Trump Tower was around 30,000 square feet, when it is, in fact, around 10,000 square feet. It involved him saying that Mar-a-Lago would be able to be redeveloped when it does not have planning permission for that to be the case, or for a separate Trump building in New York. He basically glossed over the fact that a large number of the apartments are rent-controlled.
Now, again, one of the ways that I know for sure that neither one of these individuals read these particular documents is because Letitia James had also, in financial statements, again, dating back 20 years, misrepresented the number of units in an apartment building that she owned. She said on paperwork when she was obtaining financing that it was 4 units, even though it was clearly and obviously 5 units. And you might think this is no big deal. You might think this is no big issue. But the thing is, regulations on apartments, regulations on buildings are dependent on the number of units. And many of those regulations kick in when you get above 4 units. And because you could be rent controlled or put under rent stabilization or be impacted by all these different various regulations, the value of a 5-unit building actually can be lower than the value of a 4-unit building due to the increased risk, due to the increased regulatory burden. And remember, Letitia James was not only the Attorney General for New York State, she was actually the New York City Public Advocate. So she would sue landlords and all these different other various individuals from that position for misrepresentations in order to avoid regulations, while at the same time, for 20 years, she appeared to be misrepresenting her own properties to avoid paying more on loans as a consequence of these regulations.
The head of the Federal Housing Finance Agency alleges New York Attorney General Letitia James may have committed mortgage fraud related to a Virginia home and a New York property. And so he sent Attorney General Pam Bondi a criminal referral letter.
I saw it on breaking news this morning. This case was sent to us from Bill Pulte. We have not seen it. I inquired right before I walked out here. No one in my office has read it yet. We haven't looked at it. Of course, we'll be reviewing it.
The allegations in that letter claim James listed the Virginia home as her main residence and that she misrepresented her Brooklyn property as having fewer units. All, he writes, in order to allegedly secure more favorable loan terms.
And again, there are one-to-one parallels that could relate to the Trump case. If you guys will recall, there was an issue about Mar-a-Lago, and I'm not talking about the evaluation issue. We're going to set that aside for this moment in time. We're just talking about what you could do in terms of developing Mar-a-Lago. And there were actually restrictions from the Florida state government on what you could do in terms of this property. And those restrictions, by not disclosing them in the financial form, you ended up in a situation where the Trump Corporation could actually get better terms on a loan because they weren't informing the financiers of those kind of restrictions on developments. Well, again, this is very much similar in a smaller scale, to be clear, to what Letitia James was doing, because you would get worse interest rates, you would get worse loans based on the regulatory burden that ends up attaching at 5 units that doesn't exist at 4 units. So she was materially misrepresenting, again, that information.
It's also alleged James and her father signed mortgage documents in 1983 stating they were husband and wife. You may recall AG James filed a civil lawsuit against President Trump and the Trump Organization for inflating property values to get more favorable loan and insurance terms. She won, and they were fined hundreds of millions of dollars.
Now, there are a couple of key differences that are quite notable in the Trump case and the Letitia James case that are worth commenting on. So obviously, there's a difference in scale. The Trump properties are way more properties, way more units, and had to be prepared by an attorney because obviously Trump himself is not going through and filling out those documents, although he is required to sign off on what his lawyers had prepared for him. In addition to that, the Trump loan that was in dispute by Letitia James, that again, the financiers weren't complaining about, the Trump side wasn't complaining about, also came with a disclaimer that said that the banks should do their own evaluation of all of his assets, and they did in fact do their evaluation, and they did not accept the loan or give the loan based on those terms, unlike what is true in the Letitia James issue. Letitia James was doing a regular basic mortgage where you're expected to be honest because there aren't the resources available to fact check everything that she put forward to these financial institutions. In addition to that, Letitia James apparently on some of these documents would also list her father, her biological father, as her husband for the purpose of getting better loans. Again, this is a clear and obvious instance of fraud. You can make the case, and the Trump team has made the case, and by the way, the New York Court of Appeals seems to be very receptive to the case, that these are two sophisticated partners in these transactions that had disclaimers and all these things, and of course, they weren't complaining on the financing side about the arrangement, so why is Letitia James going out of her way to use an obscure law in order to prosecute him, in order to extract so much money from him? But what you can't make the case for is that Letitia James didn't know, as the New York State Attorney General, that Virginia wasn't going to be her principal residence. That Letitia James didn't realize that that was clearly and obviously a lie. And by the way, if it wasn't a lie, if she was actually making that her primary residence, she would be no longer the Attorney General effective the moment she made that decision, because there is a residency requirement that is ironclad in New York State law that she would have been in violation of the moment that property closed and she was expected to establish it as her residence. So that was clearly and obviously fraud, and you can't make the case otherwise. You also can't make the case otherwise that Letitia James doesn't know that a building with 5 apartment units didn't have 4 apartment units. Obviously, she was doing that to secure better financing because of all the regulations that attach when you go above 4 apartment units. And the other thing that you cannot make the case that Letitia James did not know is that her father was not her husband. She knew for a fact that that was a lie, yet she materially misrepresented that on document after document after document.
He said he was going to go after his enemies. He declared he would be going after his enemies. And he's finally gotten down to maybe the J's on his list, Tish James. He's going to keep going.
Governor Hochul was asked several questions about the allegations.
I'm going to allow her to have a chance to explain all this.
Attorney General James is focused every single day on protecting New Yorkers, especially as this administration weaponizes the federal government against the rule of law and the Constitution. She will not be intimidated by bullies, no matter who they are.
So Letitia James can do what every single black politician does when they get caught committing fraud, which is lean into the ultra black side, go to Al Sharpton and go to the National Action Network and talk about evil white racism. But the fact is, the person who ran on and did target somebody who was a political opponent with the justice system is in fact Letitia James. This, again, is a clip from the Attorney General primary in the state of New York before she was ever in office, where she stated her intention, which was to dig into Trump and sue him into bankruptcy.
I've taken on powerful interests like developers. I've taken on legislators. I've taken on landlords. I've taken on powerful interest in the city of New York because I believe in a good fight. And right now, what we need is someone who understands that you should not be afraid, not be fearful of Donald Trump. We should take him down. We should sue him all the way to bankruptcy. We should investigate his business interests. We should investigate his business holdings. We should investigate whether or not why he was once in debt and now in a position to purchase all of this property. We can do that because I've been trained to do that, and I will do that at the same time knowing the office of Attorney General and its powers and its responsibilities and its duties. My name is Letitia James, and I plan on being the next Attorney General of the state of New York. God bless you and thank you.
Now, Letitia had a multitude of statements about how she was going to find a crime to go after Trump for, how she was going to try to make him broke, and the thing that she ultimately ended up landing on, it turns out she was significantly more personally guilty of, which was materially misrepresenting yourself in order to get better terms on loans from financial institutions. But the difference in these situations is, one, the lenders in the Trump case actually did their own due diligence and did not rely on Trump's reporting in order to issue the loans. They ended up relying on their own assessment because they were a sophisticated partner in that arrangement. They were also not claiming to be victims, while in the Letitia James case, she did it herself. She scammed the lenders. She ended up benefiting materially from these arrangements, and it's absolutely disgusting. So again, we're going to see her lean into the everything's evil white racism stuff throughout the course of this particular process, but I hope that she does face the consequences and that she goes the way of Marilyn Mosby, because no one deserves it more than Letitia James. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think about this down in the comments below. If you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social media, support me via support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the updates to the Letitia James case. Till next time.